8 years a Pilates teacher and many more as sisters. Posie, welcome to Thriving in Our Forties.
Thank you very much for having me.
It is such a treat to have you. And I've been really, really excited about this because in all the years that you've been teaching, we have never actually sat down and talked about the benefits of doing Pilates, which I just think is
No,
extraordinary, bearing in mind, we do see each other very regularly. So I'm so honoured that we've got the time today to thrash out exactly what Pilates can do and how it can help us thrive in our midlife and beyond.
no, not at all. It's great to be here.
Well, before we do a bit more of a deep dive into the strength behind Pilates and how it can impact our mind as well as our body, can you
Mhm.
give a bit of a background about why you got into Pilates in the first place and how it's impacted your body over the years?
So I got into Pilates. It was about 2011. I had a skiing accident, and I hadn't done any Pilates prior to that skiing accident. I was fresh out of university, really, so early 20s, working at a job in Christie's auction house, so totally completely different. And I I snapped my ACL, which is the main ligament that runs in through your knee, and had quite a bad accident, but was very lucky not to do any more damage. Anyway, the short of the long is that I went through a period of significant pain before and after the operation, and my day-to-day life was severely affected, and I couldn't do lots of the things that I wanted to do, like I used to do, like running and lots of cardio-based exercise. So it wasn't until I found Pilates and I was encouraged to do Pilates by a specialist that I really saw the difference. After about 6 weeks of doing it, suddenly I could see the light. So that's how I got into it. Initially, I didn't love it. I didn't love it. I thought it was a bit boring, and very
I was, I was,
judgmental.
I was going to say that, and maybe we'll touch on that a bit later. It's that as a connotation, a bit Pilates being a bit slow and a bit
Yeah.
dull.
And also for older women, I mean, in a church hall, that's the kind of it's much more fashionable now, but that was the connotation, especially like particularly when I started doing it as well.
Mhm.
So yeah.
And then in terms of the impact it's had on your body as well, it helped hugely with the recovery.
Yeah, so I
Recovery.
actually after the operation, I actually started when I was off the crutches, which takes about 12 weeks. I was actually really into yoga, into Bikram yoga specifically, because it was a way for me to really get sweat on, and it was absolutely awful thinking back at it. I don't know why I enjoyed it so much, but I think it was a real release for me. And I'm also very flexible. So at the time, I thought yoga was it was giving me everything, because I was getting tight. I'm very flexible, this is an interesting concept we can talk about, but I'm very flexible, but also I would get very tight. So I'd always feel the need to stretch my muscles. What I didn't know is that actually I've got something called hypermobility, where my joints are very mobile, so they go beyond the normal range of movement. But when you're hypermobile, your muscles start tightening up around those joints in order to protect your joints. So there's this vicious circle of always feeling like you need to stretch, but actually holding stretches in yoga was in the end quite detrimental, and it took me a while to find that out. So yeah, yoga's great, but you got to be careful. So that's when I found Pilates, and it gave me everything I needed.
That's amazing. Um, I've spoken to a few people about being hypermobile actually, and it's one
Yeah.
of those subjects that you bring up, and more people can relate to it. So it's amazing to know that you tried one practice, i.e., yoga, and
Yeah.
actually had to navigate to find something that was really going to benefit what you wanted out of a physical exercise, but also what your body needed in order to support it as well.
Yeah, exactly that.
Let's get on to talking about Pilates. I am older than you, but you are working with clients who are all ages. And
Yeah.
so in our 40s, Posy, there are big shifts happening. Physically, we've got muscle loss, we've got energy levels in decline, we've got busy lives, our hormones are fluctuating. What would be great to do is to do a bit more of a deep dive into each of those areas to see
Yeah.
how doing Pilates can help us thrive in midlife and beyond. And the topic I want to start with first, and I think it will resonate with many women, is the pelvic floor.
Hmm. Yeah.
Speaking from personal experience, and I think again, people can associate with this, well, I've never really thought about the pelvic floor until, to say it bluntly, I then started to wet myself doing various things, whether that was running after children, whether that was going to a trampoline park and suddenly realizing that I've had to put a jumper around my waist. Some people
Mm.
talk about sneezing. So it's a frustrating experience, and it's also embarrassing.
Yeah.
So how can Pilates support our pelvic floor?
So Pilates, essentially in Pilates, you're working the deep muscles. So from doing HIIT classes and lots of cardio based things, you're going to be working the outer layer. So there's two different layers to your abdominals. And Pilates, you're working your transverse abdominis, which is your deep layer. That really helps to support your pelvic floor muscles as well as your spine and your core. So with the pelvic floor muscles work with the deep layer of tissue in your abdominals. So effectively you don't even need I do teach pelvic floor stuff, but effectively if you do enough Pilates and you work your deep layer of muscles, you're going to be working your pelvic floor at the same time. Now I also think I've never struggled with wetting myself, which is probably a good advert for Pilates, because I did Pilates a long time before having children. But it is, I think what happens as well is women have children and they're desperate to get their figure back, so they want to go and do all the sweaty stuff, which I totally appreciate because I like the sweaty stuff too. But it's really important to start at the basics, and it is building it up slowly. So effectively, the stronger your pelvic floor, the less likely you are to wet yourself. And we do a lot of stuff as well, working in the inner thigh muscles. So we use a lot of equipment, balls, etc., to really work the inner thigh. And that all links up to your lower abdominal muscles as well. So um, Pilates is the best thing for pelvic floor. But I would say that there is a thing with women that their pelvic floors can be too tight as well. So with Pilates, I'm very keen on teaching how to work your going pelvic floor, but also how to release, because you can overwork it and then you can actually cause more problems as well. So it's getting that fine balance. But Pilates really helps that without a shadow of a
And
doubt.
what's the problems that come with having a tight pelvic floor?
With a tight pelvic floor, you can get problems with your bowels,
Okay.
constipation, and you can get sort of pains in the lower back. And
Okay.
yeah, it can cause problems with weeing as well. So
Gosh, I never thought that. I thought the aim was always to have the tightest pelvic floor possible.
because
But
your body is always going to be in a sort of sense of holding in and gripping,
yeah,
but you need to let it go as well. So everything just all your especially your bowels, both aspects can work freely and not be held back. You might
that's
you can get
fascinating.
UTIs as well as another sign.
That's fascinating. Okay, so where you automatically work on your pelvic floor through the exercises that you do with Pilates, which is brilliant because I
Yeah,
imagine what I'm doing now, I'm currently kind of squeezing and being like, right, I need to do that all the time. But by doing Pilates, it's
yeah,
nice to know that you don't actually consciously have to be doing. It's almost a subconscious
yes, and that's what
action.
I like to teach, because I think teaching pelvic floor for 20 minutes in a class is a bit boring. I like to be able to do, I mean, it's important, but we need to be able to, I like to be able to people to move and feel other benefits, but doing the right exercises in Pilates will inherently work your pelvic floor at the same time. Yeah.
Amazing. So it's a win-win basically.
Yeah. Win-win.
So going now on to bone strength, and I had a conversation with a personal trainer in a previous episode, and we touched on a lot about strength training and how important it is at this stage in life that we should be supporting our skeletal mass rather.
Yeah.
As we are old, our muscle mass deteriorates, and that's due to decline in estrogen during the perimenopause. So,
Yeah.
in order to maintain bone health, what can Pilates do for us?
So Pilates, we do a few things. We do a lot of weight bearing stuff without equipment. So planks, all fours, a lot of stuff to support the muscles around your bones. So that all helps. It definitely has to be a sort of an element of resistance. So I
Mhm.
do a lot of that. We use bands. So that's it's sort of a form of weights, but TheraBand's really good. Long ones and short bands. I did a class this morning using both of those. And that really helps to build bone density. And we also use weights. We use small weights, but don't underestimate small weights, because repetitive movements that will help without a doubt to build help build bone density. And it gets more important actually as you get older. And I have a few clients who are in their sort of 70s, and I encourage them to use weights, because as you say, the estrogen's probably barely there. And it's important to try and counteract that.
I love the idea that it feels like you're doing a workout as well with Pilates. I'm the first to put my hands up that I have not done enough Pilates with you over the years. But the few times I have done it, I have come away and thought I've worked my muscles, and you feel it the next day, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. Because you're working this the thing about Pilates, and strength training is brilliant, but Pilates works the smaller muscles too. So if I just did weights in strength training, I'd be huge, because I know they say weights don't make you bulky, but I'm afraid they do make me bulky, because you're working all the time the big muscles, whereas Pilates
Mhm.
is all the little ones, all the little stabilizing muscles around your joints. So
Okay.
yeah.
Fabulous. So you're working the outside, you're working on the strength. What is it? What can Pilates do when it comes to mental well-being? Because, and I alluded to this in the beginning, there is a lot going on with people's lives. We've got busy family lives. You could be working. We've got families getting older, but still have little people running around. I've got a litter of puppies in the next door room, I think, squawking away, that need looking after. And so we put pressure on ourselves to do a lot. So
Yeah.
how can Pilates help us to manage our mental well-being, but also support us with the energy that we need to really embrace what this decade and beyond can offer? Because I think that's the thing. We've got so much to look forward to in our 40s and beyond, but we can feel a bit tied down by what's immediately in front of us. So
Yeah.
how can Pilates support our lifestyle and give us that energy to keep moving forward?
So yeah, it's a really good point. So this morning, actually, in a class, I had a couple of ladies that are in their 40s, and they come quite regularly. And it's funny because you see them come in and everyone's a little bit stressed, just done school drop off. One of them had a child in the car, wasn't very well, so she brought the child along. And I by the end of the class, honestly, they were a different set of women. And I really feel like Pilates is hugely beneficial for the mind, because you essentially have to focus on what you are doing. You have to be in the present. So you have to focus your breath. You have to connect your breath to your movement. And there's a lot to think about. So it's incredibly mindful. You do not have the opportunity to think about what's going on outside the room. Well, especially in my classes, you can't, because I'm very conscious of keeping people moving, keeping people flowing onto the next thing. So their mind it's not switching off to outside the
Mhm.
room. And the breathing in itself is very mindful. So I focus a lot on it. So it's very relaxing, brings cortisol levels down, definitely. I think a lot of this high intensity stuff is great, and it has a purpose at a time. But I think as you get into your 40s and your life is particularly stressful and there's a lot going on, you don't need that extra bump of cortisol. You need something to bring it down a little bit. And I think I'm learning as well that women feel like, or everyone feels like, they need to go and sweat in order to burn the calories. But if you're sweating and then you're stressing in every other area of your life, you're not going to lose the weight, because your cortisol levels are going to stay at a level. Whereas
Mm.
if you bring everything down and incorporate Pilates in your life, it's going to make your whole body and mind feel a lot calmer, which is hugely beneficial for metabolism as well.
How often do you need to practice Pilates, do you think, to reap these benefits?
I'd say twice a week, probably. I mean, once is good. Twice, 3 times is obviously 3 times is brilliant. 4 times is brilliant. But I think realistically, twice for people's lives, I think twice a week is great.
And for how long? Because again, time is of an essence, but at the same time, going back to what you've just been talking about being mindful and in the present, maybe it's great to do slightly longer on Pilates than it would be to say do strength training or to go for a run.
Yeah, I'd say 45 minutes is a good one.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah,
45, 50 minutes is good if you can. If you can. I do some 30-minute ones, but I think to actually get your mind in it as well, I think you need a little bit longer than half an hour.
absolutely. I can see that completely. And actually, the idea of, I know you're not sitting down with Pilates, you're always on the move, but being almost on the mat and having that connection to the floor and to your movement, it creates that lovely holistic feeling that you're
Yeah,
working your mind and your body at the same time.
yeah,
There are
exactly.
obviously different practices that you can do within Pilates, and you very much are based on using the mat Pilates. But I
Yep.
think at the minute, Reformer Pilates is having a moment.
Mm.
Do you do that? And what are the benefits of the two practices?
So I do like for reformer. I'm actually trained in reformer, but I haven't had the bandwidth to teach with it. But I think one day I will, specifically on a private level. The danger with okay, I'll say the pros are that reform is brilliant. You're working against resistance. Basically, it's like a single. Well, Joseph Pilates created reformer out of a single bed, so you're working again with springs against resistance, and it is very very good. But I would say that you need to know what you're doing. So when I went
Mhm.
the other day, there were ladies kind of working against quite heavy resistance, and they were not in the right position. I could see it going into their back, and you've just got to be very careful, I would say. And I've been reading quite a lot of articles recently about people having injuries on it. I think people think reformer is harder, um, but it's not. I mean, a very slow mat class, yes, reformer is going to be harder, but I feel like you've got to feel the movement from within yourself. So I think mat's a really good place to start because then you can really feel where you're supposed to be. Reformer, you can't feel that as much. So you might not be getting the benefits that you wanted to. Um, and there's all this jumping reformer and cardio reformer. Again, great, but you've got to be very aware of you've got to have a knowledge of Pilates, I would say.
So I was going to say exactly that. So for people starting out, the place to start would be on a mat
Yeah,
with an instructor. I know I know you offer online classes, but if you can try and get in the room with an instructor the first few times, so that you're being taught the right poses, and
yeah,
again, going back to the breathing as well, to
absolutely.
get that initial knowledge, and then you can progress from there.
Mm, exactly, exactly.
Fabulous. But I think again it goes back to it's a combination of a few different exercise techniques, isn't it? To really feel that you're working your body and your mind. You know, if you can mix it up with reformer or mat, and then just getting outside and going for a walk or doing a
Yeah,
swim, isn't it?
exactly. It is. It's
It
mixing it up. I don't say to someone you should be doing Pilates every day of the week, and that's what you should be doing. Pilates supports what you do every day of the week, which is walking, sitting, maybe running, like that. Pilates is holding you in the right position to then do all the other things. It's also strengthening the muscles to do all the other things. Yeah. So it's always a balance, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I know you do videos for rounded shoulders or sore backs, particularly people that are sat at a desk all day. You offer those exercises for those targeted areas.
Yeah, I do. I've got a lot of videos on my system, and I've got some anti-desk videos. We're all getting hunched over. So the classical Pilates is a lot of rounding up, hands behind the head and curling up. But yeah, it's good. It's good. I do some of those exercises, but I do a lot of chest opening, strengthening the back
Mhm.
because we need to counteract how our lives are, which is over a phone, over a desk. So a lot of extension, which is opening the chest.
Before we finish up, Pose, I want to just ask you a few misconceptions that I've been researching and seeing whether you can debunk these for those listening as
Yes,
well.
okay.
So can I share a few ideas? And
Yeah.
we might have touched on some of them already, but let's get your opinion on them. So first one, number one, Pilates is not proper exercise.
That's because you don't sweat necessarily. Well, you do sweat in my Power 30, but you don't sweat. So therefore, exercise is related to sweating, I think, and that is entirely false. It's like the most proper, that's really bad English, but I think it's the most proper exercise you probably could be doing because with your we're working with the curve, with our spines, with how we're
Mhm.
supposed to hold ourselves and enhancing that. So that's absolute star.
Rubbish. Rubbish. Okay,
So, yeah,
number two. Okay, Pilates is only for women.
it's a very good one. So when I first started, I started in Yorkshire. Been teaching in London a lot before that. But when I started in Yorkshire, what year are we? 2025, 4 years ago. I couldn't get the men to my class, but then I started a men only, and they're all coming. So it's one of my most popular, my men only. Um, Pilates is as important for men. I think the men are put off because they think it's sort of, again, going back to the older women in the church hall, or it's about pelvic floor stuff. But men have pelvic floors too, and they need to be worked. And men need it. Oh my God. I mean, their shoulders, their hips are tight. They're a lot of my clients, they go running, everything's so tight. So, and their cores are getting weak, so yeah, Pilates is as important for men as it is for women.
Absolutely. Number three, Pilates won't help with weight loss.
Pilates won't help with weight loss if you are looking to burn a lot of calories.
Mhm.
Pilates will help with weight loss if you are looking at your whole life and you're trying to rebalance it. You're trying to, as I said before, trying to reduce some stress in your life, and you're trying to sort of bring down the cortisol levels. If you do Pilates, you're also going to start doing everything else a little bit better, a little bit more mindfully. You might start eating a little bit better. So it's, as with everything, it's all about looking holistically at it. Um, and Pilates is a really good way of strengthening your muscles. So it's very good at giving you a body that looks very sort of elongated rather than lots and lots of weights, which can contract your muscles quite a lot. So it gives you those long, slender muscles. So as much as you might not lose the pounds from doing lots of Pilates, you're going to change your body shape. And
Fabulous.
you're going to without doubt strengthen your abdominals. So you're going to see that difference as well in your tummy.
Fabulous. And the last one, you need to be flexible to do Pilates.
No, I was too flexible to do Pilates. So actually, I guess people who are too flexible, they come in and they're doing everything and they're so hypermobile and they're like, this is really easy. Because Pilates, you're always working to an end range. So you're trying to go to a point which is safe and then work your muscles around that point. Rather than yoga, which is, you're going full on till you can't stretch anymore and you're going into your ligaments. So Pilates is great for creating flexibility. If you're not flexible at all, Pilates is the best thing you should be doing. If you're too
Fabulous.
flexible, it's the best thing too, because you can work to stabilize.
So it kind of it meets you in the middle.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. There we go. Four myths debunked. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. So Pose, I want to finish up and I want to say thank you so much for
No, not
sharing
at all. It's great to
all that.
yeah.
Well, thank you. I know we've been chatting about doing this for a bit, and it's been such a treat having you to myself with no little people interrupting. So it's been
Very true.
lovely. Yeah, exactly. And before we say goodbye, could you just share with those listening where they can find out more about you, the classes you offer, including the amazing retreat days that you do as well?
So the best thing to find out my information is on my Instagram, Posie Pilates. I do have a website, and you can find my contact details through that. It isn't updated as such, so I do need to do a bit of updating, but I do 1-day retreats once every, well, I've got one next week, and do them once every couple of months, I'd say, on average. And then I've got my classes in my studio in Yorkshire, but I also offer that online too. And I've got all my videos. So if you were to go to my Instagram, be able to find all the links to that.
It's amazing. And having done recently one of your 1-day retreats, I can't recommend it enough. It was amazing. A mixture of hardcore Pilates, and the next day I definitely felt it.
Oh,
Yummy food and being outdoors. It was really, really
glorious
very
sunshine.
special. And yeah, and you came away and you felt that you just had given yourself some time, some headspace. So it was beautiful.
Great. That's what I like to hear.
Um, Absolutely. So I will put all those links in the show notes. And if people obviously want to get in touch with you, they can DM you on Instagram anyway and
Yeah.
reach you that
Yeah.
way. But thank you so much for joining me
Thank
today.
you. Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. And I will see you in person very soon.
Okay. See you soon. Bye bye.